We're talking about the three most important things in the space to come together for this whole longevity movement to succeed, which is the relationship between peptides, cell factors, or whether you want to call cell factor, and I'm going to ask you to explain the difference between cell factors, exosomes, and stem cells in a minute, and then hormonal optimization. And so we'll probably spend a little bit of time on peptides, but before we get going, let's have each of you, and maybe we'll start with Dr. Rasham on the end, just give us like 1 or 2 minutes about, your practice, and how you came into the space, please.
Hi, my name is Dr. Resham Withamshandani. I work with Concierge MD. I'm one of the primary care physicians there. My background is in family medicine. That's where I did my training. I'm also certified in obesity medicine. I entered the longevity functional medicine space when I started residency. I did my residency at Eisenhower Medical Center in Palm Springs, and a lot of my attendings were well ahead of the curve with functional medicine training, and that's when I was first introduced into it. And after residency, I entered my first job, which was at Kaiser, and I hated it. And I was shocked that this is the way that medicine was being practiced. And this was the highest point of my career. And so I quit after 4 years, and I dabbled into the longevity space further and functional medicine. And now I'm deep in it, and I can't believe that I was practicing medicine the way I was before, because this is going to save so many lives, and I can't wait to dive in.
Hi, I'm Reshma Patel. I'm a physician assistant. I've been a PA for 23 years. I've been doing integrated and functional medicine for 8 years. I did start at Kaiser, but I did urgent care and ER, which is fascinating because a lot of the stuff I'm seeing now to help prevent was all the things I saw aging population happen in the ER. Fractures and UTIs, and we'll talk about that. I've also had, I was lucky enough to work with Lifespan Medicine, Solus Healthcare, and I also work at LifeForce. So a lot of concierge-based medicine too. Specializing in hormones.
Hey guys. Dr. Arvind Chakrabarti here. You already heard my better half, Sanjeev, speak, so I'm usually in the background. He's the good-looking dude over there that already spoke. But yeah, regen therapy is what we do. My background is ER physician, MBA. Said screw it to the ER medicine because I keep saying the same thing over and over and over again. And I wasn't really fixing anybody. I'm just putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. So I started looking at what other outcomes can we have if we start to optimize people properly. So dabbled first into peptides, got very astute in the peptide world right before COVID started. So I started treating people that had long COVID with peptides and had some good results. Then what else is there out there? And then that's why I met Sanjeev, and we started talking more into the cell factor game, which I'll delve into. But the future of science, if you ask me, is what we have up here with our three brains together. You have the foundation, which is, resetting the cells, getting your cells optimized through cellular optimization through the cell factors, and then hormonal optimization and peptides. That's your future here, guys.
Okay, and just to be clear, I didn't make a target of this panel highlighting the stereotype of Indians being leaders in healthcare. Just want to get that out of the way. It just completely organically happened, okay? And that's true. So I'm going to kind of ask each one of you to lean into one of these topics a little bit more. Dr. Rasham talking more about the peptides, Reshma talking about what hormones, and of course you're going to tell us about cell factors. But before we get into that, I think we all got to have a peptide conversation because that's the conversation of the moment right now, right? So everyone's talking peptides. I already teased it in my opening. We have the battle between the influencer-driven peptide reality and then the medical peptides. So maybe, do you want to start us off? I'll ask each one of you to talk about one aspect of this. So could you start us off? Because at Concierge MD, you're doing the peptides the right way, medical supervision. Tell us a little bit about the differences between what is happening sort of in the Wild West of peptides and then how physicians are actually using it. Could you speak to that?
Sure. So there's a lot of noise right now, and the landscape is changing rapidly as recent as April 15th, 2 weeks ago. And so RFK, Secretary Kennedy, said that he was with the FDA, removing 12 peptides from category 2. So what that means is category 2 is a list of substances that have high risk safety concerns. So that doesn't mean that peptides are necessarily approved or it just means that we're going to be going under more scrutiny. And so there are 2 dates already scheduled in July. I think it's 26th and 27th, or 23rd and 24th of this year, where there is going to be a pharmacy compounding advisory committee that will be meeting to discuss 7 peptides in July and the remaining 5 by the end of February of 2027. And this is a huge, I would say, step forward. It's not necessarily a win, but it means that we are going to be going through each one of these peptides to determine its safety, efficacy, and hopefully there are going to be more human trials, because that's been the biggest issue. But anecdotally, we have seen such profound improvements in health, whether it's injuries, gut health, brain health, and again, peptides in that space. We also are including GLPs because that is a peptide. And so the world is changing quite rapidly, and you want to just make sure that you're working with a company that is using a trusted source, it's regulated, because a lot of times what we're seeing are that patients come to us requesting for peptides, or they have reactions from peptides. It's because they're getting it from unregulated sources, impurities, endotoxins, and that's what causes some of the side effects. And I'm not saying that, all peptides are completely safe and that you should use all of them. You have to make sure your body and your landscape and your terrain is able to handle the peptides. You can't just stack them without knowing your blood work, working with a physician, understanding doses and protocols, because it is the Wild West. You go on Instagram and every influencer is posting their stack and, posting links to buy it. But I'm so scared of what's going to happen, because if a patient has, dysregulated, HPA access, it's going to lead to terrible side effects. So we have to make sure that we are doing this properly. So my goal in this space is patients are going to get peptides from everywhere and anywhere. My goal is to try and make sure that they get it in a safe manner.
Perfect. Yes, totally agree. So how comfortable, I didn't ask you this in advance, I'm going to put you on the spot now, Reshma, but how comfortable you were with the GLP-1s? Like, explain
Very.
them. Very good. Okay. Could you give us GLP-1, GLP-2, GLP-3, right, which people are saying that would be the first $1 trillion drug. Explain what GLPs are briefly, and then explain these 3 types that are either are currently approved, or we're looking at the 3rd one coming on the market right now. So could you give us an overview? Because this is what everyone's talking about. Because that's the thing. When people talk about peptides, you kind of got to put them in these 2 classes, right? What's the GLPs that are approved as a drug that are being used, and then the ones that are under scrutiny still. So could you give us the GLP landscape?
Yeah, I'm going to try not to make this too long.
I know. I gave you a challenge. As short as you can.
The first one that came out was a GLP with 1 receptor.
Yeah, so glucagon-like peptide 1.
Thank you. The second one has 2, and Eli Lilly is the only one that has FDA approval and trademarking for it. So when it was in the Wild West, everyone was getting peptides for GLP-1s. You can get them from anywhere. And then that stopped. So
it didn't stop. It's supposed to have stopped, but it didn't. They wanted it to stop, but it hasn't stopped.
Correct. Yeah. And then the third one coming out, retatrutide, is getting FDA approval, acting on 3 different receptors. And some people that have been on it say it works really well. Some people say it doesn't, depending on what's happening. I think it has to be individualized. And microdosing is what I use a lot in my practice. So getting baseline lipids, hemoglobin A1C, insulin resistance, all of that plays into it, making sure the terrain is where you want it, building muscle, getting the fiber, getting the sleep, hydration. You cannot skip any of those steps. Hormones are an additive, and then you can start layering the peptides.
All right. And so, Dr. Arvind, I'd like to, so we're talking about the Wild West. We're talking about GLP-1s. Let's jump into a little bit, because you said you started working with peptides during COVID. There was a whole telehealth boom, right? I think that's where kind of this whole thing happened, right? During COVID, people were like, I'm worried about my health. They went online. People started talking about peptides, and it kind of exploded. Tell us what you saw, but then tie it into what you've seen medically kind of happening in the space.
So when my whole aspect about peptides, and obviously we all love our peptides, want to say one thing about sourcing as well. So one of the things I've been saying a lot is ask your source. If they cannot get it into a finished filled product, you have the wrong source. That's the easiest question to ask. So if they can only give you an lyophilized product, probably not the right source. So that's the easiest question to first ask to kind of go on your point. And on your point, sorry, not to belabor this too much, but the whole premise to me begins with cellular health. So mitochondria is the basis of what the cell is going to get energy from. So we should be optimizing that mitochondria first. So my experience when it comes to peptides, you look at the mitochondrial enhancers, you look at the SS31s, you look at the MOTCs for energy, you look at humanin for recovery. Those three are fundamentally amazing. And then you can look at FOXO4 to get rid of some of the senolytic cells that need to go away. And there's a lot of things you can do from just a pure mitochondrial and cellular perspective. Start there, make that your foundation, build around it.
And so I think we're going to have a conversation this afternoon I'm going to have a conversation with Galen really diving into the regulatory side. So I'm not going to spend too much more time on that. But I think like these peptides are getting sort of thrown out. I think let's maybe talk about the biggest one, I think, other than the GLP-1s people talk about, BPC-157. I want to ask all three of you this question. This is just a theory for me as a scientist and a researcher that I have, because what I have seen and heard anecdotally talking to all sorts of people and even testing myself is like you'll take a peptide. Some people will take a peptide and say, well, it did nothing. And then they'll take another peptide, it did nothing. And then they'll take a different one. They'll be like, oh my God, it was life-changing. So I have a theory. It's almost like the same way we're talking about dysregulation. Sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. Hopefully it's not too bad. We talk about some dysregulation in like an organ system. It's almost like the system in the body that is dysregulated. You got to find the right peptide that is optimizing for where you have the dysregulation. So it's like if I did CJC Perelin, for example, did nothing for me. So I think that system is fine, right? But GHKCU copper is like life-changing for me. So what do you think about that as a theory, or how do you think it works? Like, why is it that, like, how do you even decide what peptides people need? Like, how are we figuring that out right now? And how do you think it works? I know it's a big question. We're still figuring this out, people, by the way.
Well, I'll start with CJC, ipamorelin. I think that a lot of times patients may not react well to it is because they're not taking it at the appropriate time. And because it does work on an empty stomach right before bed. And I feel like the patients that come back to me within a month and say, I'm not sleeping well still, and I still didn't see any difference with lean muscle mass or visceral fat reduction in whatever capacity that we are tracking these metrics. I would say that, are you actually taking it 90 minutes after you eat? Because that's a long period of time after dinner to remember to take it. So I would say it's all about dosing and the efficacy, right? So timing is really key. And then again, understanding the body as a whole. BPC-157 is an incredible peptide. They've seen in studies that it can regrow tendons in rats. So I would say that for that, you want to make sure that the body is capable of that healing. So because it's, it's formulated, it's naturally made in your gut. It's also there in your gut naturally. So if you're taking it, but your body is just not able to heal itself because of so much inflammation, even though it can help with inflammation, that's why I think it's important to check things like, high sensitivity CRP, IGF-1, or fasting insulin to see where is your body at and can your body actually handle these peptides, because they're potent molecules.
Okay, so again, it's that idea of you have to understand the terrain you're dropping the peptide in and understand why there might be a gap in the result. So Reshma, just curious, because you do telehealth, right, with people. So is you're doing that and working with people, like what are you seeing what are consumers demanding, or what are consumers asking for? Because I think a lot of people now have become a informed health consumer, and they're looking for things and they're asking for things. Sometimes maybe just because they saw it online, but they have a friend, told them something. So what are you seeing patients come to you and asking for, and then how are you dealing with that?
It's an interesting question. There's, like you said, one group of people who probably know more than I do sometimes in terms of these things exist, but they don't know how to make it work for themselves. Then I also work at Life Force, and this is all new to them. So then they come on board. I explain their labs, things that can help them. And they're like, you want me to inject myself 5 nights a week with Simorelin? it's you get it on both spectrums. But yeah, I get people asking me, I want to stack my peptides. What should I do? And I say, okay, well, let's take a roll back.
And where are they getting their dosing and their information from? Like, are they just chat GPTing it? Is that what they're doing? Yeah.
AI is amazing and, kind of scary for those things. I think some people don't realize we talked about Smirlin, so I'll bring it up, but it helps your body to produce its own human growth hormone. And if you've had cancer in the last 2 to 5 years, that's not necessarily something you want to be giving yourself. So there's so many conversations, I think, that are not happening that you need to be extra judicious about, I think, personally. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what I'm gonna maybe just hand it to Dr. Arvind. So, yeah, let's talk about dosing because I think everyone's chat GPTing their doses, and then or like how do you as as a physician working with people, like how do you even dial in dosing? Because again, we're all bio individuals, right? So it is a little bit of an experimental process. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's often like you kind of have to work with the patient and personalize it and see how they respond. And or are there? Do you feel like dosing is going to get easier? Like what do you think's going on there with peptides?
Well, the dosing, the biggest question comes from also where you're getting the product, right? You can take a whopping dose of a 50% efficiency product and you're not going to get the results that you want. So it's really about the sourcing. So we have people all the time, hey, I'm taking 500 micrograms of whatever, right? And then the same person's taking 500 micrograms from a different brand and they're having a totally different result. So I think sourcing is a big aspect. But once again, it's about the optimization. So if you have this phenomenon called cellular attenuation, where your receptors just shut down, I'll give an analogy. If someone comes knocking at your door, if you're cellularly optimized, you're going to open that door. Most people's lives are a house that has a dog barking, kids yelling, screaming, a lawnmower in the background. So if someone's knocking at your door, you never open that door. That's cellular attenuation. So if your cells are open and responding, and that's what we're trying to really push on with our quantum cell factors, open up those, get rid of that noise, get rid of the cellular noise, and have those peptides work better. So your dosing starts to come way the hell down.
Right. And that person knocking at the door, so to speak, is the signal of the peptide, right?
Yes.
So in that metaphor, it's like the peptide's coming there to try to get the cell to do something, but the cell is, like you talked about this before, they're too inflamed. It doesn't matter. Like the dose response isn't there. Whereas if a person is super optimized, a smaller dose may actually have a really big result because that person already has, like, they can hear the signal, right? It kind of is the metaphor there, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's move on. We'll still come back to peptides, but let's move on and talk. Maybe I'll ask the ladies to start us with this. I'll just be transparent. My wife's given me permission to share this. My wife, for any of the women here who have dealt with this or men have dealt with this with their husbands, the menopausal treatment and the whole process is a freaking disaster. It's the worst thing in healthcare I've ever seen. I mean, I'm not a woman, so I wouldn't have known otherwise, but it is pathetic what we do. And I recently read an article that I don't think got a lot of press, and it should have, that said the number one way for us to understand what longevity drugs and longevity therapies could be, would be studying menopausal women because of the amount of aging that happens when the ovaries shut down. So let's take a minute to talk a little bit about, first ask the two of you to talk about women. We'll get into men in a second, but really I think it's a bigger concern for women. So talk to us, what the heck is going on there?
Yes. So even as early as 35, estrogen and progesterone are starting to go down, and as they go down, there are lots of changes happening in a woman's body. So the fat that is usually around your hips ends up, in your belly area. And more than that, there's brain fog, you're snarky, there's rage, you're just, not able to function the way you want to. And you're deteriorating when at this point in life, you actually need to be thriving because your kids are growing up, your work is demanding. And I feel like because of this whole HRT movement and how many theories there were about, all the side effects that it could cause, it prevented women from going through this process in a graceful way. And I feel like it did such a disservice to so many women that when I start going through it, I'm going to end up taking hormone replacement therapy or even certain peptides to support that, because I don't want to be uncomfortable. Night sweats, insomnia. We as women carry so much mental load and burden that we should be aging as gracefully as possible. And we have the tools in medicine. So why would we hold back? And then the other thing I want to say is, you know, everything can be affected, but you still need to have the foundations in place. So that's sleep, diet, exercise, and muscle mass. Muscle mass is the biggest thing for women. And I feel like, you hear it about it a lot, but I feel like it's not getting as much attention as it should, because we are all just supplementing with peptides and supplements. But the best medicine is just weightlifting for women.
Yeah, well said. Totally agree. All right. So whatever you want to say in your experience, because I mean, this is we could spend days on this topic, to be quite honest. It's a very big, complicated one that's under discussed, but I'll just let you share what you've experienced and what you see.
Hormones came full circle for me. I know I probably don't look it, but I graduated in 2002 from PA school. 2003 is when the Women's Health Initiative came out. So I was taught in school to prescribe hormones. And then I come out practice and they're like, we need to take everybody off hormones. We were told they were conducting a study. The information wasn't released. The data was not released. We were just told, stop every woman on estrogen, progesterone. We're causing heart attacks, stroke, cancer, blood clots, you name it. Freaked an entire generation, including my mom, who never got the opportunity to be on hormones. And so I got to see her age ungracefully. I'm now in perimenopause. Last year, November 2025, they removed the black box warning, the FDA, telling women that estrogen does not cause blood clots and heart attack and stroke, and progesterone can be actually preventative for cancer. We're finding more receptors in the brain to help with dementia. And to what you were saying, the organs of longevity are muscle and bone. So the other important thing, if you learn nothing else from today, testosterone is not just a boy hormone. Actually, we make a lot of testosterone as women. And that's one of the first things I see decline even before estrogen and progesterone do. So women walk in and they're like, well, that's for a boy. I don't want to look muscular. But if you look at the data and it's there, you actually can build muscle. You can turn fat into muscle. It's going to help you focus, creativity, ambition. We can live such an amazing second, third chapter, whatever you want to call it. I have so many patients, women come to me. They're like, I cannot find a single female physician or male to write me for testosterone as a female going through menopause, which I think is terrible disservice. Women need 1/10 of that dose that men do, but it is just as important. I mean, I know we talk about estrogen and progesterone. I think we all know that, but we're not talking about testosterone enough, in my opinion, for women.
Right. Okay, well, let's lead into have the boy talk about testosterone. So, I mean, we can talk. Well, first, I'll give you a chance if there's anything. I mean, you're still a practicing physician, or anything you've seen with hormone replacement therapy and women that you want to just sort of speak to.
No, and that's the truth. I think, I mean, you guys have said it perfectly already, but it's a tough process. And I'm very open as well. My wife, we had IVF for our first child 2 years ago, and her issue was a diminished ovarian reserve, right? And that's a very common process. The issue, I think, also in women's health, a lot of it is women want to have kids later in life, but they're hitting perimenopause much earlier in life due to this microplastics, bad environmental toxins, so on and so forth. So it's about getting proactive, learning that even in your 20s, you may have to make a couple changes. And I couldn't agree more with the weightlifting and working out aspect, right? You have so many people come to you like, yeah, I feel the same way. I'm like, well, what'd you have for dinner yesterday? Did you go work out? Well, I had a couple beers and pizza and yeah, okay, well, duh, there you go, right? You didn't really improve. So working out, nutrition, hydration, sleep, which I suck at. I'll let you all know I suck at sleeping. Thankfully, Geetha has given me a few things to help me sleep a little bit better here, so I'll be taking those. But generally speaking, that's going to be your life, the best thing for your life, you know. And once again, I think women age 2 to 3 times more during that perimenopause, menopause stage than any other part of their life.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, you know what, just hold the mic for a second, Dr. Irvin, because let's jump into, let's give you a chance to talk about self-active, because we heard from Sanjeev talk about it. But I'd like to go into, one thing I'd like to get you to describe is the difference between stem cells, exosomes, and cell factors. Are they the same thing? People are going to be confused. Is this just another type of stem cell? Could you just speak to that and just give us your best description?
Yeah, I'll give it to another analogies because as you can tell, I love analogies, right? So not just me, but I guess all of us are Indian, basically, that's been talking except for this gentleman here. But
Can I be an honorary Indian for?
yeah, but this is more of a software reset. I'm going to use stem cells as your hardware. They're your cells. They're internal. They're cells, right? So let's look at, I love my country, but let's look at the streets of India, for example, right? Let's go to Delhi. Delhi is a crowded city. There's a lot of cars at the intersection. Let's look at those cars being your cells. 150 cars at the intersection. There is people honking, people on the right turn going left, people on the left turn going right. You may see a dog or an animal cross the street. That is your typical inflamed human body and human cellular systems. Now, let's take that same population density and that same amount of cells. Let's move that hardware system and setup into a street like Tokyo. Similar population density, 150 cars or cells on the intersection. Things move through proper signaling and processes, and systemic improvement occurs on a regular basis. That's precision, and that's what we are doing with the quantum cell factors. We're taking the streets of India, making them into streets of Tokyo, and we can do that on a regular basis. And it comes through just, once again, clearing that inflammatory cellular noise and creating processes that create more systemic improvements. So what does that mean with exosomes, and what does that mean with our cell factors? So cell factors are the signals that give you the ability to start recuperating, regenerating, and healing. The stem cell itself is a progenitor. It doesn't have a actual process until you give it the signals to actually differentiate into what it needs to be. You got a knee injury, it's bone on bone. What do? Well, you probably don't have the ability to just use the cell factors. There you use what we want to call the closed loop regeneration system. You want to use other products. Using the stem cells in accordance with the cell factors, you allow for the cells to start to actually enter into your system, adhere, and then also differentiate. And then you get about a 4 times better improvement of your bone-on-bone disease, whether you would use just stem cells by itself. So stem cells is your hardware. We have to give you the software for the hardware to work. Exosomes are this little tweener in between, right? They're what comes off of the stem cells, which is great. But the problem is you need a stressor. You need some sort of environmental stressor or internal stressor for those exosomes to actually release what's inside of it, which are the cell signals that we're giving you. We've already stressed the basis of this. We've already given you the stressor prior to entering into your system. So talk about delivery mechanisms, right? The last thing you want to do when you tell a patient is, hey, you have the same patient, same process that's going on, and you're giving them 4 injections in 4 separate months, and their timeline of delivery changes each and every single time. There is no timeline of delivery because you don't know when the stressor is going to hit the exosome to actually cause that actual delivery process to occur. With the cell factors, you don't have that biphospholipid DNA vesicle or balloon. You have straight just signaling factors. So each and every single time you deliver this product into somebody, you can tell what's going to happen in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. For me, timeline of delivery is one of the most important aspects. You wouldn't want to go to a restaurant and wait 5 minutes versus 5 hours to get a seat. Same thing. You don't want to wait for your health.
Okay, hopefully that makes sense to everybody. It was a great metaphor as well, I think, visually. So let's jump into, Reshma, start talking about synergistics between these different types of treatments. Like, I don't know if you're using something like cell factors or exosomes in your practice right now, but how does this all fit together, right? Because that's the future of health, right? Is the idea of fitting all of this together, getting all the blood labs. So practicing the basic scientific method, right? You get all the blood labs, you get all the data, you get all the diagnostics, you look at the patient as a bio-individual, you come up with a personalized program, and then you retest and see if it's working, right? So how do we put all of this together? Let's start talking synergy.
I like this. We'll talk about signals. Hormones are the primitive signals in your body. So of course I'm going to start with that. And when I do hormones, I don't just look at your sex hormones. We have to look at the entire HPA axis. What's going in the pituitary? That controls the thyroid. That controls the adrenals and cortisol. Everything has to be matching and talking together. And then we can load it with peptides. I do exosomes. I need to learn more about these cellular factors, but it makes sense. Right. The signaling is so important.
Right. And then, so how do you think we're going to, because I think one of the reasons why people will be you talked about this, people are chat GPTing their dosing and coming to you. I think it's because people feel like they don't have access. So how do we get that process that I just described? Because you have to have money, right, to be able to do the diagnostic and then pay for the treatments and then pay for the retesting. Sanjeev talked about this. I think this is the big problem we have to solve as longevity leaders, is how do we make this accessible and scalable? Do you have any ideas on that, or what have you seen? Is it just going to, well, I'll just let you answer that first.
I want to hear more.
Well, I was just going to say, because the argument I always hear is like people compare it to the flat screen TVs. Right? Remember the first flat screen TVs? They were like $15,000, and then now you can go buy one for like $200. So are we just going to wait till it scales and the prices come down, or is there going to be another way to make that happen? Do you think AI is going to do it? Like, what's your thoughts?
I'm glad you finished that because I get the opportunity to work with companies like LifeForce, and that it's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to bring everything we're doing in longevity and hormone medicine more accessible. I think their plan is like $149 a month with, upfront, which is not terrible. Function is another company I use, believe it or not. They've been able to get really good value for the labs. I think they're running a special right now, $299 for the whole year to get all the labs that I want twice. If you tried to pay cash for it, it would be $500 one time. So all of these innovative companies are making that happen. Then the second drive is AI. People are coming in with this information, especially the younger generation. I'm blown away by their knowledge, honestly. Some of it not always on par, but most of it, they have at least an understanding. So I think just innovation, and it's already happening.
Okay, great. The synergies. What do you, first off, let's just talk about practicing. Like at Concierge MD, you're dealing with patients all the time. How do you guys approach this? You also do primarily, like, it's not quite telehealth. Maybe just take a minute and explain, because you're kind of a hybrid group. You don't have a clinic, a physical clinic, but you treat people all over. Tell us a second about what you guys do there, and then how do you approach treating patients in a synergistic way?
So we do everything from telehealth, urgent care to house calls, and every visit is about an hour, sometimes even an hour and a half. And this is a huge difference than when I was seeing patients at Kaiser. It was only 15 minutes. And I think the biggest takeaway I have is to work with a physician that understands, or any practitioner that understands how these cellular pathways and all these modalities work, because the last thing you want is to overwhelm your system and have it be more stressful to have to take a peptide 5 days in a week, and then take exosomes, and then this and that. And I feel like that can actually cause more chronic stress, because you're like, oh, I didn't do my sunlight in the morning, I didn't do my red light there. It becomes like a checklist. Whereas I think if you, again, go down to the basics, and that's why I really love getting to know my patients, you get to understand like what makes them tick, what are their interests, and then tweaking, their favorite foods, and maybe suggesting that instead of eating, this ice cream, we can give you a healthier option, and finding ways to incorporate healthier habits into their existing lifestyle. And more than even all of that, you want to go down to the, basic pillars of health, which is, again, community, sunlight, hydration, sleep. And once that is settled, I think then you add all these extra things layer by layer. But if the foundation isn't right, none of this will work.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And so just the last thing, because we're going to be wrapping up in a minute while you have the mic. I saw that there's like people can have a consult with you. There's a thing at the Concierge MD they could scan. Is that something, like, tell us about what you're doing there?
Yeah, so we're offering 15-minute discovery calls to get to know all of our services and the products that we offer. We offer everything from peptides to IV drips, as well as concierge membership models. So you can work with us yearly, and we can come to your home, do house calls, as well as handle, the whole family.
Right. And that's the difference. You don't go to the clinic, right? Like
No,
you have
we
a
come to
team
you.
that comes to you, which is literally, it's an in unique model that they have in the sense that it's national. People can see
Yes,
Concierge
we're
MD.
nationwide.
Yeah, so it's a very unique model that Concierge MD has. So they have a booth here. You can go talk to them. Reshma, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Because you mentioned, first off, maybe not everybody here knows who LifeForce is. So first, tell us who that is, who's behind it. I think is the big names behind it, and what they're doing there. And tell us a little bit about how you're working in the space with that.
So I was lucky enough, I'm a physician assistant, but I have my own practice, and in COVID made the transition to be 100% telemedicine, which is amazing. My other job is LifeForce. It's a Tony Robbins company. He wrote a book called LifeForce. If you haven't read it, it's actually pretty good. And he does talk about peptides and his own journey through health. And he realized that not everyone has access to the same level of medical care that he did. And this is why he brought forth Life Force. And so he brought this model around where you can get the labs and biomarkers and tests done you didn't even know you needed. And then you can sit with a provider on a telemedicine call and we review all your labs with you. So I do that in my own practice as well.
Right. So you do that for Life Force, but then people can also see you directly and you
Correct.
work with them directly as well. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. Dr. Arvind. So I think you said like you and Sanjeev now are partnered up. You've launched, where is it? Oh, it's up there, Regen Therapy. The booth is here. We talked about self factors. We know a bit about that. This give us a little bit of let's talk a little bit of the future vision because I think Regen Therapy is going places. So you guys just had a big announcement recently. You have some big deals that some big ways you're coming into the space. Tell us a little bit about what all that is.
Yeah, we had a press release, I think early part of April, partnering in with Zeo Scientific. They do obviously a lot in terms of the biologic space. But for us, it's about credibility, validity, testing, but it also is about bringing accessibility, right? And that's the big thing. And Sanjeev talked about it beautifully earlier as well. And these two have as well talked about accessibility. But there's so many people today. And I think in the world that we live in, due to technology and AI, the consumer's intelligence keeps increasing. Your doctor's intelligence has kind of peaked out for the average part. No offense to you guys are here, but to the average physician has kind of peaked out, right? So that delta has come a lot smaller. And then you have a lot of health coaches, gyms, functional nutritionalists, functional health coaches, right? All these people that want proper protocols and programs for their clients. They're teaching them to get on these things. Well, how do they get it from a compliant fashion? Who do they get it from? Do you just go to some random website and get, product shipped from God knows where? No, you want to do it the compliant standpoint and do it from a compliant standpoint, right? So that's what we're building here is accessibility. We want to give everyone the access to have a physician and a physician oversight to give you the programs and protocols that you need. And foundationally for me, and I might be a little biased, but not really because this stuff does work. The quantum self factor is your foundation because it removes all that resistance around everything else you're taking. People taking a plethora of drugs, 27 drugs in your nursing home, the drug necessity starts to drop because once again, you open those receptors, things start to get absorbed and processed better. So from HRT to GLPs to opiates, you can start reducing these on chronic conditions on patients on a regular basis. So for me, it's about accessibility, removing the unnecessary aspects in terms of what people are taking today and getting a healthier America. And it sounds kind of cliche, but that's the deal.
All right. Thank you, panel. Give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.